Hey everyone, welcome to a holiday edition of 310 to Left. I'm Tom Karen with you. And we're wrapping up our first year doing this podcast. We've really had a great time. Alex Spear and I getting it done most of the season. Jemai Webster, Julian McWilliams have been great contributors to it as well. We've had just amazing guests over the course of this first season. We hope you've enjoyed it. And to give everybody a little bit of a breather here during the holidays, but understanding you might want to warm up the hot stove with a little baseball, we now present to you some of the best moments of this first year of 310 to Left. So warm yourself over the holidays here with some good baseball talk as we check out the best moments of year one of 310 to Left.
I was actually curious though, like you talk about keeping a low how, I do think back to like the insanity of the beginning of your tenure as a general manager. When you walk into Fenway, is there a part of you that just remembers like the visceral experience and maybe the shock of what it was like to suddenly be this very public figure as a guy in your late 20s?
Yeah, I mean, that was a long time ago now, but it does stay with you. I mean, I was someone who definitely cherished my, privacy and anonymity, and then to all of a sudden have that change so quickly, and at a time when I had a lot of added responsibility with the job, it kind of leaves a mark. But you just get used to it. It helps you grow up, helps you mature, and I think I'm better for having gone through that. And then it helps you shape your choices going forward. I was pretty high profile for for 18 years, nine with the Red Sox and 9 with the Cubs. And so now, I have a little bit more control over how I do my job and how often people have to see my face. And despite being honored to appear on your podcast as the first guest, I'm doing a lot less and kind of shaping my life the way I want to, which is usually pretty behind the scenes. But it's been good. I'm glad I went through that. It wasn't always fun at the time, but it also comes with the territory and is a great opportunity to be part of two-way franchises at the highest level with such passionate fan bases. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Is it still as chaotic? Is it still as chaotic an undertaking? Like, as you watch Brez kind of navigate obviously you're very close with Craig Breslow. As you watch him navigate it, like, is it the same job in terms of what it's like being a public figure?
I think it's close. It's probably not all the way there. I mean, we're at a bit of a lull right now, or a moment in time where the Red Sox aren't quite as top of mind as they had been, and they will be, I think, again soon. But that back in those days, in the early 2000s, with the Red Sox-Yankees rivalry, what we were trying to accomplish and how dramatic things got, it was a little bit. There was a little bit more hyper focus, I think. So it was a little bit more of a prominent position, but still, still a lot comes with the job. And Brez not having worked, full time from the home city before has a big adjustment to make, including with the public part of the job. I think he's handling it really well. I think making a lot of good choices, and over time, his personality will sort of come to the fore even more, and people will get to know and like him. But it's probably not quite the same. Even in the local market, the Red Sox aren't right now, because of recent performance, aren't where they should be, but will be again soon. And then nationally, it's a little bit different market as well, and a little bit different environment as well.
Theo, as you said, and by design, right, you haven't been real public since coming back and becoming part of FSG. But when you have been around, I think the question everybody asks is, what is your role, right? What is, so the sort of day-to-day, and FSG has grown to such a large group, right? The Liverpool and the NASCAR and the Penguins and everything. So I guess the two-part question for me, because I think that's what you do for podcasts. It's our first. But I think, the questions, A, like, what is the day-to-day? And B, how much have you been able to touch and learn of the non-Red Sox properties that FSG is involved in?
Yeah. So day-to-day, it's an advisor role. Well, two things. So I bought in as a, very small piece as a part owner. So there's that. And then there's an advisor role, I guess technically it's called senior advisor, for FSG as a whole, not just for the Red Sox. So it's been kind of learning each of the individual companies and seeing where I can help, where I can make an impact. So that means different things for the different organizations. So with the Red Sox, it's really being there for Brez any way I can, kind of the way Bill LaJoy and others were for me when I first took over. So some weeks that means, texting or talking on the phone with Brez like 3 or 4 times a day, every day. And other weeks it means, checking in just a couple times, seeing, depending what's going on. And, some of the like bigger decisions or bigger philosophical questions, he'll ask me my opinion and why. And I don't make the decisions, but I kind of give him a perspective based on my experiences, having done that job. And then also, having worked at the league office and, been around the game a long time, but it's not so much, hey, we had someone hit the IL, who we're going to call up to take his place. Although sometimes it can, sometimes they'll ask me my opinion on something like that, but it's more bigger picture, like where we how to build a great organization, where we're going to find our competitive advantages, et cetera. Just being there for Brez and his group any way that I can. And then with the other organizations, it's different. Like golf, for instance, with FSG making, the big lead investment in Strategic Sports Group and PGA Tour Enterprises. There's a lot going on there now because it's sort of early innings. So I've spent a little time trying to get up to speed and understand the lay of the land. And then, again, trying to call on my experience, to provide, some assistance wherever I can. So I was part of the rule change process at MLB, for example, with the pitch timer and the other rule changes in 2023. Golf's at a moment in time where they're leaning into their future and thinking about where they can progress as a tour and as a sport. And so my experience with MLB might come in handy here or there. It's just adding another perspective. With the Pittsburgh Penguins, I've got to know their GM really well, and I know just enough hockey to make myself dangerous. So I'm not informing personnel decisions there, but more, again, big picture, macro issues, how to gain competitive advantage, how to set up an organization the right way, how to handle certain issues. And Kyle doesn't need a lot of help from me, but will call on me from time to time. And with Liverpool, it's, Mike Gordon has been the lead guy there, and we're really close. And it's a fascinating organization that they built over there, and it's going through a period of change. So I've been through lots of regime changes, and just provide counsel as I can on that one. And the good thing about FSG is kind of always changing and evolving, but every organization is important and takes huge priority and means so much to us. So there's constantly decisions to make, plans to make, and every day is an opportunity to gain competitive advantage in a hyper competitive landscape.
It's interesting that you mentioned like the idea of the hyper competitive landscape, right? Because like one of the things that's striking to me is you had this 2-decade run where like you're living and dying with the performance of a single team on a given day. How different is what you do now, that engaged, invested in like you're living and dying with like every Penguins, Liverpool, like Red Sox game, or are you now kind of removed in a more academic / strategic position?
Yeah, there's definitely a difference. I mean, I think it's also true for if you're the assistant GM versus GM, because I've done both of those, and you when you're the assistant GM, you care, you're just as invested. It kind of means everything to you when you're at the ballpark. But after a tough loss, when you kind of leave it at the park. When you go home, it doesn't dominate the rest of your day. When you're a GM, when you're the number one person running the organization, you feel such a responsibility for so many people that work with you, that believe in you, and then the broader fan base, that you take it home with you, and it can kind of, it's hard work to not let it impact your mood, and therefore, impact your family and things like that. So that's very immersive as an experience. And I've, in this role, or even when I was assistant GM, it's a lot easier to separate. So, 18 years as the true number one in two different places, that was plenty of time to sort of feel that way. But I think it's easier to lead a full and healthier and more well-rounded life when you can kind of lift your head up, out of the water and see and breathe a little bit and see things with proper perspective. And it definitely able to do that in this role. Still care, still personal to me, still very competitive, still want to win, but it's not something you take home quite as much or quite as immersively.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned the whole thing about missing the bus, which I had never heard before, and would love to. I mean, my goodness, you missed the bus on your first opportunity to pitch in a big league spring training game?
You remember the stadiums back then were different. They were down the road from each other, about 3 miles.
Sure.
So I'm spot starting in a big league spring training game, in 05 or something like that. Or 04, 05. And of course, I'm at the minor league complex thinking the big league bus is going to come pick up. And little did I know, we're 30, I made the whole entire bus late, and I knew that day that either I was going to be accepted or rejected. And I went out there, and I think I had to drill. They tried to hit. Millar got hit. A bunch of guys were getting hit, so I had to go out there and drill somebody. And there was no way I was not getting back on that bus without drilling somebody. So the respect, I think, came pretty quick with me and those guys.
Yeah, I firmly believe that even though you were starting in that game and at the beginning of your big league career, you knew how to make a closer's entrance right out of the chute, right? You were able to make that kind of resonant impact. I actually want to build on that by asking about your big league debut. This was Hurricane Pap's introduction to the major league scene. You came to the Red Sox. You made your big league debut under kind of the most chaotic circumstances of just about any major league debut I've ever seen. You had Manny kind of trying to negotiate his way out of Boston at the trade deadline. It was trade deadline day, so you're pitching through this moment in time. There's chaos just happening all around. Have you ever stepped back to appreciate what on earth was going on that day of your big league debut, when you, by the way, were striking out everyone, throwing nothing but fastballs?
Yeah, I do now more, Alex. During the time I didn't, but I do now. And when you make a debut, man, all you're trying to do is just be just a one piece and just come up, do your job, and that's it. Well, I think Matt Clemens got hit in the head, and I was spot started the rest of his games that year. I think he came back in the playoffs in 05 when the White Sox won. They kicked our ass. But, I think it really was a great thing for me because everybody was worried about Manny. And I just kind of came in and quietly out of nowhere just, here's this new kid. But for me, coming up, I was, the only kind of young pitcher on that staff. So I think Manny Del Carmen came shortly after me, but I was the first one of Theo's guys to get to the big leagues and stay. I think Abe Alvarez was the first one, but I think he was just one or two starts.
One game, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. So I felt a huge sense of I'm one of Theo's guys. I want to make sure that I want to prove that he was right. I want to make sure that I'm the right fit in this ball club. So, coming from the South, man, I didn't know shit about the Red Sox, man. I knew about the Red Sox-Yankees rivalry, but kind of that was about it. And man, as soon as I got drafted, boy, was I in for a surprise. And I didn't realize the whole Red Sox nation, so to speak. Man, I just took to it, and I think the culture and everything just was me in a nutshell.
Well, that was the first. I mean, that was the perfect first game to be indoctrinating. First of all, you were John Papelbon still, John the starter, right? You hadn't become Jonathan Papelbon or Cinco Ocho yet. And Manny doesn't play in the game, right? The deadline is 4 o'clock. I think it's a 1:30 game. Right, so Manny, after, at 4:05 p.m., comes out for a pinch hit appearance. Crowd goes nuts. He walks it off. Eric Fried was the sideline reporter. Manny puts his arm around him and goes, "That's just Manny being Manny." I mean, you were in the height of Red Sox madness at that point.
Yeah. I mean, and at the same time, though, I was almost like, man, this is where I belong. Like, this is my kind of way. This is how, this is the big leagues, man. And for me, I think a lot of their culture and the way that what Kevin Millar, what Kurt Schilling, Pedro Martinez, all these guys before me, those are the guys in the 04 team is really what I'm talking about, are the ones that set this culture of what we have today, where the fans show up today. And like, they don't realize where it came from. So a lot of fans that show up today, it came from the 04 team, and the culture that we have today is from them. And I was so happy to be able to be a part of that.
Yeah, well, and then becoming not just a part of it, but an iconic member of it, right? Like, when people think about that era of Red Sox baseball, and I think that that it's kind of crazy to think about how different the 04 and 07 titles were. But, I think that 07, you dancing with an empty Budweiser box on your head is central to that. But, so too is the fact that I think that you were probably the only one who informed Jason Varitek that he should jump into your arms, right? Everyone else is jumping on Tech. You're the one guy who's like, no, you bring it in. How wild is that to be, to have become an iconic part of that tradition?
Well, for me, I think being a part of something and the tradition that was set from the 04 team, to be able to carry that out. And I look back on it now and the legacy of all those teams. I think that for me, there's a certain family aspect to it, right? And my wife will even say this, the wives' room and the family room and the way that the Red Sox treat their families it's different. It's not the same as the Phillies, the Nationals, and other places that I went. It's just not. There's the culture of the family being a part of this club is just, it's different, man. And so for me, I didn't realize that while I was playing, and now I realize it. And especially in time, Nick Field's death, when you see the support and everybody that comes back, and we're all still like one big family. Nothing's changed, even though we all live in so many different parts of this country, or world, I should say. And to me, that's the biggest thing that I get and I'm thankful for with this Red Sox franchise.
I find it fascinating. Obviously, the all-time saves leader of the Red Sox, all-time saves leader of the Phillies, right? And these are two tough fan bases. You got to be a certain kind of guy to thrive in those two cities. Were they completely different to you? Were there similarities? Did they bring out the best in you? What was the commonality between the two?
Well, the common thing is the two cities and the expectations brought the best out of me. I was not, when I hit free agency, I was not going to a team that wasn't going to compete, period, or didn't have a fan base that, expected a lot. I just knew that wasn't going to work. So Philly, it was very comparable in that. And then, the one thing I didn't know though is that, the Red Sox tend to have a little bit more grace than the Phillies fans. I think I remember one time I think one year I had 28 in a row and I blew my 29th save. That was pretty good. I blew the 29th when they booed me off the field. I was like, oh shit, okay. But I accepted it and I was like, okay, let's go with it. And then there was also a time where the Philly fans, they're just a little bit more ruthless, I would say. Like this guy was mad at me. He literally ran on the field and tried to jump in the bullpen, and I convinced the cop to let him come on down, and we ended up putting him in a headlock, and Shane Victorino had to run in from center field to come save the guy. But, that's the kind of the differences.
I mean, that's amazing. You went Nolan Ryan to Robin Ventura on a fan charging the field.
Yeah, it was a bad idea with that guy.
It is interesting for me to think about, though, right? Because, I think that, you had grown up in the Red Sox, right? So, there was a certain amount of understanding of who you were. And I think that, you were allowed to, you were allowed to be you. You could be kind of you could have your sometimes eccentricities. You could express yourself in any way that you wanted to, and you would have a lot of guys around you who had your back. What was the experience in as you changed teams and were around players that you hadn't grown up with? And obviously one of the fairly or not, some of the one of the kind of icon enduring images of your time in Philly is getting into it with, or rather in post Red Sox is getting into it with Harper. How different was it kind of navigating not being a lifelong member, of an organization?
That's a good question, Alex. Because it is different. So I feel like, it's almost like a child. The Red Sox years were my formative years of Major League Baseball, and I feel like I couldn't have had a better dad than Tito. I mean, he was like a dad for me. Mistakes, my first years, tons of them. Mental mistakes, physical mistakes, mistakes off the field. So for him to be able to harness not only me but everybody else in that clubhouse, that was a perfect role model, coach, whatever you want to call him, psychiatrist, dad at times. He was all of those wrapped in one, and it was a perfect thing for me to have him during those years. And then as I go into Philly and Washington, it became more of, okay, I've got that first step under my belt. I've grown. This is who I am. I need to be my own coach, know my own abilities, and be able to be a pro now and go into a different clubhouse and these other pros and know that this is how I play. This is how we're going to play together, and all of us be pros together, and kind of traverse that. That was the hardest thing for me, is it's a new field of players that you're trying to accomplish a world with together, but also, be professional and have each other's back. So there's transition periods throughout your career. And to me, I think having Tito in the beginning was the biggest key for me and helped.
Roger, it's so interesting to think about the fact that you have, you're coming up for New England charity events. You've done so many of them, throwing batting practice on the field at Fenway in support of the Jimmy Fund, among many other undertakings. I am curious, I did not grow up in New England. I was a transplant to the area, came here. I got to college while you were in your last couple of years with the Red Sox. And then I was here for your post-Red Sox career, right? When you came back to Fenway as the villain for many years, and the dynamics were super interesting. And sometimes they were very loving. I remember vividly seeing people in tears when you walked off the mound for what we thought was your final time in 2003, when you were supposed to be retiring and then didn't, and kept on coming back.
Anybody can retire once. Anybody,
Well, it's really interesting, though, to me that you are once again, I feel beloved in most parts of New England and Fenway. How much at home do you feel at Fenway again? And are you surprised that you were able to kind of rebuild the roots that you had into this ballpark that was formative for you?
Yeah, great question. I mean, it was Yeah, I never left. I mean, really, I never left. Of course, I would have. Thank goodness for the twilight of my career. Right, it was a long twilight. It was a long
The
twilight.
longest twilight ever. Yeah, right.
I got to experience a lot of cool stuff. Continuing on, I really was. Steve Augie was like the assistant GM. I think was traveling secretary, and he would be my running mate. He was great long distance runner. So our 2, 3, 4 miles around the commons out there. We talked about the last. I was going to sign like a 4-year deal that would have got me to the year 2000, and probably call it a day there. Maybe get into coaching or doing something with the team. But the general manager didn't want anything to do with it. And like I think back then they said you don't give a 31 or 32-year-old pitcher a 2 or 3 year contract. And I said, yeah, you're right. Now you give them a 10-year contract. And so. I mean, I remember talking to Greg Maddux out at the Tahoe event, and he's like just shaking his head. He said, Rock, they couldn't afford us right now. And I said, Doggy, you only have to go 4 innings. You wouldn't have to even ice. I mean, this is great. You still throw 100 pitches, but you only go 4 innings. So, but coming out of the University of Texas and being drafted by the Red Sox, what a dream. I knew a little bit about the history, but it was cool because my mom wrote me a really cool poem about Fenway Park. And then when I got here, it was once I got my feet in the dirt and established, where to make a living, be able to change the course of my family and my extended family's life. Then it was right back focused on winning championships. And then we get to the World Series in '86. I'm like, yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Playing when everything's so meaningful. And just how cool it was. I just remember telling my brothers and sisters, they're like, what is it like there? And I said, people come straight from work, take off their jackets and ties and get a dog and a beer. And here we go, man. They're on top of you in this cool little stadium. Had to learn how to pitch inside at Fenway. I was leaving balls over the middle of the plate to guys like Luzinski and Don Baylor and Dave Kingman. And when you do that, you don't get them back. They go a long way the other way over that green monster. So I was able to learn very rapidly how to make a 17-inch plate, a 24-inch plate. But to your point, even when I was a Yankee, everybody's like, oh, he went to – I said, no, I actually stopped in Toronto for 2 years. I don't know if anybody remembers that. All these other guys that were Red Sox that went directly to the Yankees, that's how it went. But it was when you're on the, I get it. When you're in a Red Sox uniform, the Yankee people don't like you. But when you go to dinner or out on the street, they're the first ones to come up and ask you for an autograph. Unless a couple guys have been really drunk where it would have got ugly or something stupid. Very rarely, I think, in my entire career has that happened. They see you out of your uniform in your street clothes, and it's pretty good. I tell people all the time, I mean, I was very fortunate. I got to pitch in 2 of the most historic ballparks. New Yankee Stadium's nice. It's not even close to Old Yankee Stadium, not even close. And then the change. Yeah, and then the changes they made to Fenway. Every time I come back to Fenway and see the guys, like you said, the work I do at the Jimmy Fund, I love it. They help out my foundation. What a treat it is for me to get back on that mound out there and throw what I call room service to those guys. And they get a hit at Fenway Park. I mean, I make them nervous because I walk up halfway through and I go, do you guys realize you're standing right where, Ted Williams and Yaz stood and, Babe Ruth, and they're like freaking out. So, that part that's fun. I always tell people though, you don't realize it. One of I think the toughest place is, South side of Chicago. When I went over there to pitch, regardless if I was a Yankee or a Red Sox, there's you roll into the bullpen. There's 12 college football players that have been drinking all day, and as soon as I come through that door in the bullpen, it's like, Rocket, we're gonna kick your butt. You suck, and all that. I mean, they're going, they're just wearing me out. And the only peace and quiet I get is right when they're saying we're gonna kick your butt today, Rocket. And ladies and gentlemen, boys, we rise. Say they gotta stop. They gotta stop. So I get 2 minutes of peace and quiet, and then as soon as on the break, you stink, and we're gonna. So, but that's the cool things about the plan. That's when I get on some of my golfer buddies that the caddy has to hush everybody perfectly quiet. And I said, hey, come watch me warm up one time in an opposing ballpark. You guys want it to be quiet.
I obviously you had the opportunity to pitch in with the Blue Jays and the Yankees and then Houston and then back with the Yankees. There had been a time in 2007, that last unretirement, again, to your credit that you had the option of retiring and unretiring many times, where you were talking with the Red Sox and the Yankees that summer, right? Like that last summer in 2007. Did you come close to coming back to the Red Sox at that point? And if so, like when you watched the Red Sox win the World Series that year, that was their second title, obviously, in that run. Was there a part of you that October that was like, they made the wrong choice?
Not really, because I think when the Red Sox came calling is when after I finished in Toronto. So I get to Toronto and I'm doing very well. I have a great 97, and I think midway through 98, Mel Queenie, my pitching coach. And the reason why I hit it off with Paul Beeston was awesome when he came down. Once I realized that I wasn't going to get an offer from the Red Sox, and we actually flew home from Hawaii. My agents called me and said, you need to get back to Houston. We need to talk. And it was almost laughable. And my agents were like, what, he hit me with like Cleveland, New York, Toronto, and there was another one involved in the numbers and the years and the length of the contract. And I just kind of sarcastically laugh, and they go, what's so friggin' funny? And I go, well, a team that I just worked my tail off for 13 years, even though my win losses weren't great my last couple of years, I was in the top, I think, 5 in all the pitching categories. My second to last start, I timed my 20 strikeout game mark, and I looked at him. I said, I can't get an offer from a team that I love and that I was drafted by, and I worked my tail off, but I've got all these offers. It was unbelievable. So, but anyway, Beeston flew into Houston, Paul Beeston, and Beastie and I hit it off. He wanted to rebuild the Blue Jays. I tell people when I was with the Red Sox, 80s, mid 80s, late 80s, early 90s, the Yankees really weren't our rival. They sucked. I mean, they had Donnie Ballgame. Yeah, they had some other great players, but Donnie Ballgame was their star guy. And the Blue Jays were, the team that we were going after. Now, once I went to New York, and then Red Sox changed ownership, it got competitive again. It didn't get ugly we had a couple crazy games, of course, out there, but it didn't get, it wasn't like when you used I think like 75, 76, you see guys bashing into home and we're running guys over and sliding into second base, running guys over at second base and stuff like that. But anyway, Beeston left and went to the league office, and that kind of changed the dynamics of my contract. And as I was really going off, it kind of threw me back. After I warmed up, we were walking underneath the stadium in the Sky Dome, and Queenie said, listen, we're coming up on the trade deadline. You might want to, visit about that. You're doing great for us, but we're going to go young, and it doesn't look like we're going to try and win right now. So it kind of threw me off a little bit. And then when he hit me again with it 2 starts later, that's when I called my agent and said, hey, it sounds like they're going young. They're not going to be competitive. And that's when the wheels started turning. Then nothing happened. That off season is when the Sox started. We all started talking. And really, I think the only guy I really knew was on the team was I think Nomar was still there. I'm not 100% sure on that, but so that's kind of how that happened. Steinbrenner came calling again. He came all the way down to Houston, and as soon as he walked through my door, he goes, "I've been trying to get your bleep 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 for a number of years now. Do you want to be a Yankee or don't you?" And so we went upstairs and had a long visit, and it was great to visit with him. Obviously, go to New York, do all that, retire. Andy Pettitte signs with Houston, makes a comment that I think an offhand comment, joking around that, yeah, he'll talk to me. Yeah, because they said, hey, can you talk to Rocket about it? Yeah, I'll talk to him. At the same time, these new white Hummers came out, the really cool ones, and my wife wanted a white Hummer. And I'm good. I'm retired. This is going to be fun. I get to relax. No more ice in the shoulder. And the crazy radio station guys at home that I do, a rock and roll station I do stuff with, they buy this Hummer and send and put it in the front gate and just directly call Deb and say, this is yours if he's on the mound here in April. And she goes, guess what? You're coming out retired. You're playing. You go, really? So that's how that happened. Retire again after, I don't know, a couple of years with the hometown team, which was a blast, getting there and getting Bagwell and Biggio to the series. But Yeah, the last time was crazy. It was just the Yankees. I was actually in my garage working. Deb answers the phone. I saw the Yankees get swept. I don't know, it was Cleveland or somewhere. And the phone rings. Deb comes out in the garage. She goes, Joe Torre and Brian Cashman are on the phone. And I was like, the game just ended in Cleveland. I just saw him get. She goes, I know they're on the phone. So as soon as I pick up the phone, the skipper said, Rocket, how you doing? I go, hey, Skip, how you doing? And then Cashman, dry as ever, says, how long will it take you to get ready? And I go, Cash, I'm 45 years old. He said, well, I need you in my 4th or 5th spot on the mound, but I need you in the locker room too to get everybody on the same page so we can get in the playoffs. And so that's when the craziest started. I said, I'm going to have to call you in 10 days. And I took off we have a park there called Memorial Park. It's got a 3-mile running track on it where I do intervals, and in the off season or getting ready for spring training. And so I just wanted to make sure my legs, but yeah, it was crazy. It was, I was worried about, again, when you're 45 years old, you're worried about a number of things, how your body's going to react and feel, but that's kind of how everything worked out.
Hard to believe 20 years ago, making your major league debut. And it's a fascinating debut, not only because you homered, and we'll get into all that in a couple minutes, but just because, unlike somebody getting called up to the Red Sox today, you were getting called up to an established team of major league veterans, a team that had gone 7 games in the ALCS before, a team that was thinking about winning the World Series. What was it like to be one of the few rookies, the few truly young guys on that team?
Yeah, that was a wild ride. I'm trying to think of, it was like Lenny DiNardo was a Rule 5 pick, and so he came over, kind of hit him a little bit in that way. Kind of the way back in you could hide a little bit more back then. Now you probably can't. But it was quite fascinating to me that, one, I just was so excited to get to the big leagues. Nothing else mattered. To fulfill my lifelong dream of being in the major leagues was just a high in itself. But I'll never forget it. We were down in Charlotte, and I got a call from Buddy Bailey and says, yeah, you got your passport? I was like, actually, I do. I went on the Red Sox cruise that year, and I had a passport. And Buddy Bailey goes, well, that's good because you're going to the big leagues. And I was like, what? Oh, my God. So I had to go run to the field, which is in South Carolina. At the time, now it's a new stadium, and just packed those bags up as quick as I could and got on a flight to Toronto. And then we didn't know if I was going to play that day because Bill Miller was deciding if he was going to get surgery on his knee. So I get a call after that. I'm watching the game in my hotel room in Toronto, and Tito calls me. He's like, hey, congratulations. You're going to be starting tomorrow. And I literally got about maybe 4 hours of sleep. I was running on straight anxiety, excitement. And I'll tell you, it was just walking in that locker room I'll never forget, and having no idea where I'm going, especially in Toronto. No one knows where they're going in Rogers Center back then, right? So looking in my locker and seeing the number and did not care. Had no idea why the number 20 was there. But was super excited because that number was a lot lower than all my spring training numbers that I had in the past years. An offensive lineman, over to a guard, maybe into a linebacker. I think it was like 55 or something like that. I got that number 20, and just truly special to be a part of that team and get to learn so much from a lot of great veterans, bench veteran guys to guys that played every day that just showed me the way. And it was just such a special group of guys that. When one passed away, Dave McCarty, he was super influential in guiding me through my younger years and directing me in a way that allowed me to understand that, hey, you gotta be ready when they call your number. And so I was ready at that time. I felt ready. It took 2 more years to get there to be fully established, but that 04 team was probably one of the best mentors that I could possibly ask for. To be introduced into the Major League Baseball.
It's such an interesting dynamic that was in play at that time, right? Because like you came from prospect obscurity, right? Like you didn't get drafted as a junior, even though you were like performing at an All-American level. Ridiculous. You ended up being a an inexpensive draftee for the Red Sox, and obviously had a little push and pull before you decided to sign for a very, very modest bonus. But then, you kind of blow up with the whole like Greek God of Walks thing, which was in part driven by the fact that someone wanted to trade for you at a time when the Red Sox had not been a player development driven organization, right? It had been years since Nomar had come up, since Trot had come up. And in the intervening years, they had been, driven by free agency, driven by trades. Did you think, as you were coming up through the Red Sox system in the early 2000s, did you think that there was a path to the big leagues with the Red Sox? Or were you like, well, I'm playing for a bunch of teams here and we'll see where the chips land?
Yeah, at the time, I mean, we were bad. I mean, our minor league teams were bad. I mean, it was too bad. Wow. And I hate losing, so it didn't really go well for me. And that's the one thing too, is the minor leagues are very tough because you have to be selfish in a way because you're developing your own entrepreneur in a lot of ways. I mean, you have to develop yourself, and then you're playing with these teammates, and then next thing you know, they go, "Hey, you're going up a level," and then you have new teammates, and you have to learn and grow with them. And it was a wild ride, I think, and I never thought, "Hey, I'm going to play for another team." I was so focused on every at bat, every pitch. I was so intense in that way that it was all about how do I get better? How do I improve? Because if I don't improve, I'm not getting the major leagues because I'm down a level, right? I always thought I was down. I never thought that I couldn't make it. It was more that I'm not there. So what do I need to do to make myself better, to show them that I can asset to the major league club? And so for me, it was just grinding away, just learning myself, muscle movement patterns to better myself. So, I went out to Athletes Performance and went out there and got in better shape and learned about nutrition a little bit better and understood what I needed to do to maximize my potential physically, and then applied it into the baseball sense. So, no, I never got ahead of myself. I try to explain that to my kids too. They're so funny. Like they're like little league, trying to go to all-stars like that. We're going to don't worry about that. Just focus on today's game. Focus on taking the mound. Focus on getting your at bat. Like, they were always questioning, am I playing? Hey, am I going to pitch today or short? I'm like, listen, what are you doing right now? Focus on that. So a lot of the life lessons that I learned along the way to get to the major leagues, I try to apply to my kids. I don't think they listen half the time and they don't care with that, but it's all good. And that was my mindset. It's funny how today is taught, the mindset of be in the moment. Back to the Wild West, it was like, go play baseball, get better.
All right, so let's go to that major league debut. I was looking at it again the other day. Pat Hankton on the mound. You're facing the Blue Jays up in Toronto. I just watching that trip around the base paths. There's so much going on in that 2 minutes or whatever it is, from hitting the home run. I think you point at your parents who managed to get up there in time for the game. You get to the dugout and get the classic silent treatment, then the big hug. I mean, that was a hell of a 2 minutes in the life of Kevin Youkilis, wasn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot of 2 minutes in the life of Kevin Youkilis, to be honest. But well, it was wild. I mean, it just, yeah. Like I said, I had 4 hours of sleep, but I was just running on adrenaline the whole time. And my first at bat, I popped it up. 2-1 change up, popped it up. I'm like, hit the roof. And then I was like, wait, because I skied it. I just missed it, right? So then I get the 2-1 pitch again, and I just crushed it. And I was like, oh my God. And I don't know, now they do the average, home run trots. I'm definitely up there with Tyler O'Neill on that home run trot that I got around the bases. I was flying. I mean, I was going around so quick, and then, hitting third, going home, and then giving a high five at home plate. And that was the only high five I got. And then I look in the dugout, and Toronto is perfect too, because everyone can like kind of sneak down and kind of do their thing underneath. And then I was just sitting next to Mill. And I'll tell you, it was just so cool after I just sat there for a couple minutes catching my breath, because I ran quick around those bases, and just like the shock, like, oh my God, I just hit a home run in my first, I wasn't like a home run hitter per se. And it was just a crazy feeling when all the guys came around, and One of the other special moments was, my parents being there. My parents were everything to me. My father was such a great mentor in so many ways. My mom driving me and my brothers around, and that's why Mother's Day was such a special day for us, for all the sacrifices they made for us. And then I'll never forget too that it's kind of a sadder story, but my roommate my freshman year passed away. He committed suicide, had some mental issues, being bipolar, high school friend, and we always talked about that day that he would be there on my, if I ever made it to the major leagues. It was a dream I talked about with him all the time. And just that emotion hit me too. At one point I started breaking down because I was thinking about my friend Donnie Cram and him being there, and I just saw a smile. It was one of the cooler moments where you just vision things in life, and saw his smile and just thought how proud he would be of that moment. So it was very emotional. It was very exciting. And the best part about it was like, hey, today you're in the big leagues. Tomorrow you're facing Roy Halladay. So go get him, kid. So it was a lot of fun. And Toronto will always be such a memorable place for me.
I mean, that is amazing to have, to have a moment in your life, really, where you can have so many people kind of with you. Was that in the dugout that you were breaking down, like right after hitting the home run?
It was after all the guys came around me, and I kind of went down because it hit me, and it's like, hey, there's no crying, there's no crying in baseball, and I'm new, so they're probably like, what is he like, and a lot of people understand, like, you get so emotional about things like that, but I hit it pretty well. I hit it just because, I just didn't want my new teammates, they were all veterans, to be like, what's up with this guy? Why is he crying right now? I was like, I can't tell the story right now.
Well, so in that vein, though, like, you're trying to fit in with a veteran group, as we're discussing, like, how, but this is the most exciting thing in your life, right? Like, you've arrived in the big leagues, like, you've fought hard again, like with zero profile at the start of your professional career to get there. You did arrive with a clubhouse that had some unique components to it in terms of what the environment was like, and the personalities that were allowed to be very outgoing. And within that context, what was it like for you to be a rookie? Did you find that you had to kind of stay between the lines, or were you like, did you just hit the ground running and feel like, I am free to do whatever I want to here?
Definitely not the case of the latter. You could not anything as a rookie back then. I mean, it was stay in line, shut up, don't say anything, just walk the line, and it was okay, because when you play with a team like that with all these great veterans and all their numbers and all their stats and their success, you're like, okay, yeah, all right, it's probably smart, just be a number, right? Just fit in. Allow them to do all the talking. We had Millar, that could do all the talking to the cameras and stuff like that. So it was like, hey, just do your job. Go out there every day. Just don't get in trouble, right? Just do all the little things to keep yourself in that lineup. And I didn't know how long it was going to be, because Bill Miller was going to come back eventually from an easier knee operation. And so for me, it was like, hey, just go out there, compete, show them what you got. And you don't know if this is, a 5-week thing. Could it be the rest of the season? But for me, it was like, I'm going to go learn a lot from these guys. I mean, we had Ellis Burks on that team, a veteran that was awesome, that showed me around. Mark Bellhorn and I hung out a bunch. I'll never forget, man. That guy worked on a swing so much. We like right before we go out, like to hang out at night, like after a game, you'd be like looking in the mirror, and I'm like, Belly, knock it off, man. Let's go. Let's have fun. We'll get it tomorrow. And just a great group of guys that were all unique. And I think that's the thing about baseball. It's funny, like the outside world is always like, oh, are you guys all best friends? And I go, no, we're not all best friends. Like, we have our little groups and we really enjoy each other when we play on the field, but everyone's unique and the personalities are different. And some people like to go out here, and some people are, religious or whatever. And I think that's the fun part about baseball, is the diversity of the characters. And so I was very lucky, though. They took me under their wing, and I mean, it was wild. I'll just say that it was just a wild ride that I had a lot of fun, just hanging out with these guys and talking baseball and just all the new cities. I mean, where do you go? I don't know where to go out. Like, and they would just take me. And when you're a rookie, the best part about it is you don't pay for anything, so it's a fun ride.
Hope you enjoyed a look back at some of the great moments we've had this year. We have enjoyed every minute of it. Hope you have too. And we hope to see you again bright and early in January when we start looking forward to spring training and Fort Myers and warmer weather and what should be a really interesting baseball season. But for now, we thank you for being part of it. And for all of us at NESN and everyone behind the scenes, thanks for checking out this edition of 310 to Left. We'll see you again next time.